have a beautiful town, we have excellent schools, we have a reasonable cost of living in some ways.
You got that milk.
But it's just this feeling of we're just not headed in the right direction in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of that has to do with kind of the establishment that is still set in stone in terms of making governing decisions for our town. You hear this next station to heaven, and while we are in some ways the next station to heaven, I don't think that should be a recipe for complacency. And I think one of the things that really attracted to me to Craig as a candidate is his forward-thinkingness, his ability to look at other towns, other cities, gather data, assimilate that data, and come up with a set of best practices to move New Canaan forward. Because I think, as you said this morning, that change is inevitable or we're going to fail. And I feel like that Craig is really the only candidate that we have, one of the two. that really represents, I wish I'd say it's a cast of 1,000. It's a cast of 2. That really represents change and is forward thinking and is a listener and just a genuinely good human being. That you don't feel like you're talking to. Well, I'm not going to go into it. All right. So with that said, it's a pleasure to have you here, Craig, and
appreciate that.
The floor is yours. There you go.
Well, some of you know a little bit about me, some of you don't. So if you've heard any of this before, my apologies. But one of the questions I'm always asked, why am I running? Why am I doing this? And I can honestly tell you, I had no intention of doing this. I had no plans of doing this. Liz and I have been, my wife Liz, if you know her from the town council, was born and raised here. My father-in-law was Landis Gores of the Harvard Five, the Gores Pavilion. My mother-in-law's family goes back always 100 years. So we have very deep roots in the town. And I've been coming here off and on for 30 years, and for the last 10 years we were coming once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week to take care of my mother-in-law, to help her, even though staying put was working with her. And then literally we have 6 children, 3 biological, 3 adopted. The youngest one graduated high school. We realized that Pam could not live alone anymore. And so it was either put her basically in a facility or come live with her. So we sold our house in New Jersey, moved up here, and we've been living here 6 years so that Liz could be a full-time caregiver. I drive 2 hours down and 2 hours back to my full-time job, where I'm at Canaan University. I'm a professor of management there. I have a dual doctorate in business and government. So I teach management. I train mayors, I train city managers, I train state officials, I train Board of Education members, because at least in New Jersey, they actually have to get continuing education units every year. I consult with towns all around the country, so I study best practices in local government. When we first came here, I met Rob, I talked to Rob Malozzi and said, this is my background, if there's anything I can do to help you or be of assistance to the town, let me know. And he and I talked and did a few things off and on. When he was primary, I supported him. When Kevin got the nomination, I talked to Kevin, and it was very clear to me that Kevin would take the town in the wrong direction, and I was very unimpressed with the way he saw himself as the leader of the town. So I went and talked to Kit, and started to work with Kit and worked on Kit's campaign along with Liz when she ran for town council. I fully intended a few months ago to work on Kit's campaign for elections for selectmen, when she said she did not want to run for first selectman. She wanted to run again for selectman. But she said, I'd like you to run. You know more about local government than anyone I've ever met. And I know how much you love New Canaan, I know how much you care about this place, I know it would be a big change in your life, but would you consider? And Liz and I had a long conversation about what this would mean, my leaving the university and a bunch of other things. But the reality was, absolutely. If the town was being well run right now, whoever was first selectman, I would pat them on the back and say, how can I help? But I'm really concerned that the town has not been going in the right direction, and it's been going in the wrong direction even faster the last 2 years. So I'm running because I think we are in grave danger. We see some of the warning signs. We see the property values. We see a lot of the same issues of process, or I should say the lack of process and the lack of progress. And I want to change that. I'm also really concerned about our fiscal situation. I was raised by my grandparents. They lost everything in the Great Depression. They ended up moving to the West Coast, working in the warplanes during the years. And so they had this great fiscal responsibility. They never borrowed a penny they didn't have to. They never spent a dime without squeezing it first. And they raised me to be that same fiscally responsible person. And so I initially was a Republican for many years. They were Eisenhower Republicans, which meant they were pro-union. They were pro-health care. Actually, national health care was on the 1956 Republican platform. They were pro-blue-collar working class people. And my values stayed there. It's just the party that left me, to paraphrase Ronald Reagan. I worked over the years for a number of elected officials at federal, state, local level, Republicans and Democrats, because my emphasis was on policy. What is it we're trying to accomplish? What's the best way to do it? What's the most efficient and economical way to do it? And for a long time, that's what all the politicians wanted. When I was in college, Scoop Jackson, who was a famous Democratic senator, came out with a Republican congressman, who I still cannot remember. And they sat, up on the stage, and they were talking about the parties and what the party. And Scoop Jackson's the one who said, we agree on 80% of stuff. We want to do the same thing. I have 10% that he doesn't agree with. He's got 10% that I don't agree with. But 80% we're the same. Here's the difference. Those darn Republicans will raise your taxes. They don't believe in borrowing money. So they'll pay by raising taxes. If you want to keep your taxes low, you should be a Democrat. That's what he told me. And I came up to him later and I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a Republican because I don't believe in borrowing money either. If I can't afford it, I'll save until I can. And he laughed. I ended up working for it. And that fiscal responsibility's always stayed with me. So when I come to New Canaan and I hear, over and over again, we're a wealthy town with expensive tastes. What we spend doesn't really matter. The budget doesn't really matter. We shouldn't even worry about those things. That bothers me because I know we are better off than many people. We are better off than many communities are. There are people in this community who do not have any financial worries and never will. But I know, Liz and I have door knocked on about 1,500 homes now. We've talked to people all around this town. We've been the first. We've had people say, oh, I've lived here 20 years. No one's ever knocked on our door. Nobody's ever asked us what we think. And they tell us about their life. And a lot of them are two-income parents. They're both working. They're hanging on. But they're certainly not wealthy in any sense. Every dollar is an important dollar to them. They need daycare. They don't have nannies. They don't have au pairs. They're not going to in the future. I've talked to a lot of seniors that are on limited incomes. They're concerned about their future. Even if we talked to one woman, she's selling her house for 1.4, she's going to walk away with 1.2.5, 1.3, but she's concerned that she can't stay here because she can only afford to spend a portion of that because she's got to save the rest of that to live on for the rest of her life. And she can't find something that's really senior friendly at that price point. So, she raised her children here. She's lived here for 46, 7 years now. She'd like to die here, but there's really no place for her in this town. And I've heard the status quo say, well, if you can't afford to live here, that's not our problem. Well, I don't think that's what a community is. A community is not just a cute downtown. It's not just some pretty open spaces. A community are people that care about each other, that listen to each other, that take care of each other. And I think we have just as much responsibility to those at the lower end of the economic scale, at the middle of the economic scale, whether they're single parents or seniors, as well as the well-to-do sort of hypothetical New Canaan family that we think about. And we're not doing that. And when we're not doing that, we're not being a community. We're just being a bunch of people who don't have to worry about anything except our own problems. I'm really upset to look back on, and you can pick any project you want, cell towers, the Waveney Care Center of 10 years ago, pick whatever you want. Something comes up, some group says no, it gets killed, and then we move on to the next thing, and we say no, and it gets killed. We don't say no, but, okay, this is not, but we need this, where are we gonna put it, and work together. We just let it die and then come back 10 years later when the problem's that much worse. And that's absolutely killing us as a town. And we will not be successful in the future if we keep doing this. We need a long-term vision. We need a vision of New Canaan in 2040, 2050. What do we want this town to be like? And then we can work towards that. And that includes at a financial level. I'd like to have a 5-year financial plan where we have a set of fixed goals for what we want to accomplish with our debt and our spending. I love being number one in schools. I don't like being number one in spending or debt. I think there's a lot of room for efficiencies. I think we should prioritize our spending. I will spend money. I will spend money, but I see it as investment. So if we're investing in something that will provide a return to the town in the long term, I have no problem with that. I heard Kevin say he wouldn't start any fight he didn't know he could win. If you know you can win, it's not a fight. I'm sorry. I will fight for every cause in this town that I believe is important. My former office mate, he passed away a couple of years ago, but we have to evaluate each other from time to time. And he evaluated me and described me as a combination of Mr. Rogers and General Patton. And I sort of chuckled at the time, and it is because of, again, my experience in politics is academic, where it's so vicious because the stakes are so small. I will do my utmost to be communicative, compassionate, to try and bring all the sides together, and then I will fight with every ounce of my being to bring those things in on time and do what I said I was going to do for the good of our students, or the faculty, or the people here in this town. And so I'm fighting because I want New Canaan to be a place that my grandchildren can and want to live in. And I've seen it's failing now. Liz and I, as I mentioned, have 6 kids, 3 biological, 3 adopted. We were fosters. And our oldest son is 44. He's a senior vice president for Bank of America. He oversees small business loans for New York City and all of really 2 jobs, all of New England. And his wife is right in the process of becoming a partner at Lock and Lord Law Firm downtown. They just had a granddaughter. So we have a little 1-year-old granddaughter. They lived in New Canaan. And the first thing he said is, well, we don't want a huge house on, 4 acres. There's 3 of us. We want a nice house, 3,000 square feet, maybe half an acre. And I want to be closer to downtown. I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere. Number 2, your downtown's for old folks. We like to go out at night. We like to listen to live music. We took them out at 5:30 and half the downtown was locked and closed. And the last thing he said is, I'm on my cell phone all the time. I can't not have cell service. And you don't have any of that here. And so they ended up buying a home in Bridgewater, about 3,200 square feet, 10 minutes from their local downtown that has a brew pub and a wine bar and a lot of things for people to do in that age group. And has great cell service. So, I know firsthand that the people that we want to attract to this town are looking at us and saying, this is not where I want to be. And doing more of what we've been doing is not going to make it any better. Even, the number, this morning I heard that, and I saw the real estate report, that the number of home listings is going down, or inventory is going down. But that's deceptive. It's kind of like saying unemployment is down, because unemployment doesn't count all the people who couldn't find a job and gave up looking. Well, the real estate numbers don't include all the people who tried to sell their houses and pulled them off the market and would still like to sell if they could. Yeah. We have a lot of inventory of houses that are for sale or would like to be for sale if they could be. And they're not selling, and we're not doing anything about that. We're just saying everything is fine, and it's really not. So there are a lot of things I would like to do to change that. I'd like to go back to the more collaborative kinds of government we used to have, at least a little bit more under Rob. I would bring the Utilities Commission back so that the town has more control over cell tower placement. I'm really unhappy about the contract that was given to Eversource. I mean, it's really great that we have natural gas, but you couldn't have written a worse contract than the one we've got. Our roads are torn up, and they will be torn up for at least 2 more years. Under the terms of the contract, they won't repair the roads because there are 2 years for people to decide to patch in. Then they will pave the roads. And then in the future, when people do want to buy in, they'll dig the road back up, patch over it as those stuff. Now, when I reached out to people in the Midwest and in the Western states through my contact list, and I said, if you're putting in a new main line like this for a utility, what do you do, what do you not do? And they talked about it. They said, well, if you're going to do that, what you do is you have them put the line in and then stub to each location up to the edge of the road. That way, as soon as they're done, they can pave over it. They never have to dig it up again. And if somebody wants to connect, they just pay for the connection to the edge of the road. I talked to the woman from Eversource, who's our representative. I said, why didn't you do it this way? Nobody from the town ever asked. Obviously, one of our big issues is transportation. The train service. A lot of people depend on that, and it's a selling point for the town. We can't do anything about the speed of trains from Stanford to New York as a town, and the state can't do everything because it's 2 states. But the line, it's not the New Canaan line, it's the New Canaan and Stanford line. It's half in Stanford and half in New Canaan. So anything we want to do has to be both towns. I made an appointment, I went down, I met David Martin, the mayor of Stanford, and I said, tell me what New Canaan has been doing with you to improve the train line for our citizens. He said, nothing. Kevin's never called, never met with me. So, no matter what ideas we have to work together. And Dave was I'd love to work with you. I want to improve things for both of our towns. And if that involves some town financing because the state may not have all the money, let's talk about that. I've talked with and met with the mayor of Norwalk. Because again, there are a number of services that Norwalk provides that small towns can take advantage of. Just one of them is the Juvenile Review Board. We do have adolescents in this town, children who get in trouble with the law. Right now, the only alternative is to basically take them down and book them and run them through juvenile court in Stanford. Juvenile Review Boards are an alternative. They're made up of school people, social work people, law enforcement, and so on. And it's a diversionary alternative. Now, it's not for every child, it's not for every case, but it is an alternative. And so kids can go to this, and if they are processed properly, and it's kind of like community service and things, they go through it, no record. It's to prevent them from having a record, it's to prevent them from getting involved in the criminal justice system. It's not rocket science, it's not overly expensive, it's about $1,000 a child. Norwalk has a juvenile review board. Most of the towns around us participate. Guess which one doesn't? And again, we've never even talked to them about it. So that was one of several things I talked with him about, services that we could share or contract with them for that would save us money and provide a better outcome for our town. But again, my main goal is to keep our current charm, but to give us the same #1 quality of government that we have in our schools. So that young people will want to move here and say, oh, that is such an innovative town. They're doing such neat things there. I want to move there. I want to be a part of that there. And feel like they're welcome. And feel like whether they're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, they can be part of the government. They can be part of the town. They can contribute. They don't have to live here 30 years and be a member of the right club before they're allowed to come in and make a contribution. And I think we can do that. And that's why I'm running, is to be the person to do that. So, I'm talking way more than I like to talk. I know you came here. I really came here to listen to you, not because, again, last point. I never think I'm the smartest person in the room. I don't walk in saying, I've got all the answers. And in fact, I don't even think that's my job. My job is not to come in with all the answers. My job is to make sure we ask all the right questions. Because if we don't ask the right questions, we won't get the right answers. And the best answers come from a collaborative discussion, not from one person who walks in and says, I'm the CEO, I know what we need to do, I have all of the answers, thank you very much. So it's a different approach to what we should be doing. And that's what I'm trying to bring to New Canaan. And I'm very excited. I think we're going to do it. I think the town has learned they can vote for a Democrat and the world doesn't end. I think they've seen that undying loyalty to the status quo is not working for them. Again, I think it's a problem in either party's in office. If any party is in office for too long, they stop listening, not only to the other party and the other people, but to their own people. And I think we may have a little taste of that here in New Canaan. We've never had a Democratic first select, ever. Kit came within 34 votes. I want to beat Kevin by a heck of a lot more than 34 votes, and I think we will. And I'm really excited that you're all here. I want to thank all of you. I want to hear from all of you. I want to know what your issues are, what your situation is. And so if anything I can do to hear or listen or answer questions, I would be happy to.